Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Canadian Agriculture Literacy Month, which is being celebrated across Canada with students from coast to coast. And Canadian Agriculture Literacy Month is a very special time. It takes place every year in March, and it's a year that we've dedicated to celebrating agriculture and connecting the story of agriculture into the classroom. My name is Laree Williamson. I am the CEO of Agriculture for Life. At Agriculture for Life, we actually live in Alberta and we deliver programs with students and teachers and families all across the province all year round. So we love agriculture so much that we just don't celebrate it one month out of the year. We celebrate it every day all year. But this month is very special because we've had some special guests that have been joining us. And we're talking a little bit about what agriculture is about and what careers and what people do. Today, we're very excited to have Dr. Natasha with us, and she's a veterinarian here in Alberta, and she's going to talk to us a little bit about what she does. We will ask if you have questions, you can use the chat. We'll watch for your questions in the chat. We'll also have time at the end. Again, we do ask that you mute your lines just so it doesn't interfere with the presentation. We are recording the session and we'll have a link to share with you after so you can watch it again, or any of the students that couldn't make it today can watch it. We do cut out the faces, so don't worry about that. If you didn't do your hair today, don't worry. We do, through the magic of the editing suite, we make sure that everybody is blurred out, so you don't have to worry about that. So I think that's all of my housekeeping duties. Helena is on here as well from Ag for Life today, and she'll be joining, watching for questions and encouraging participation. But from there, I'm just going to dive right in and welcome our doctor this morning. And we are excited to learn about your story and about food.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Laree. Welcome, everyone. This is such a neat experience because I have no idea where you're all sitting, but safe to say we're all in Alberta, which is pretty cool. We all share that in common. So I'm just going to give you a brief background of what I do in my career and how that may look in your lives. So our story, our food, as Laree said, I'm a beef cattle veterinarian. So I'm a doctor for beef cattle. And I just want to point out, I say that I'm a beef cattle veterinarian. I don't say I'm a cow vet, because if you want to be really smart, the term cow actually just means the female adult. So I just don't take care of female adult cows. I take care of all types. So the male version of a cow is a bull, and their young are called calves. And I get to take care of all of them. So that's why I call myself a beef cattle veterinarian. There we go. So already, you've learned that my name's Dr. Natasha Kudrick. I'm currently speaking to you from Vegreville, so I don't know, maybe there's some students around me listening, but I live by Vegreville, Alberta with my partner, Kelvin, my husband, and we own a cattle farm. So we own a cattle farm, and then I'm also a cattle veterinarian. So I live and breathe this, so like Laree said, I get to celebrate this every day. So I'm very happy that you're taking the opportunity to listen to what I do. So I'm a doctor of veterinary medicine. The letters after my name is DVM. That's a photo of me. You can see I have a stethoscope in my ears. So just like human doctors, that's what we use to do physical exams on our patients. But unlike human doctors and maybe vets that look after your dogs and cats, I don't tend to wear the white lab coat as much. I tend to wear coveralls and boots because every day I'm on the farm with my clients, which are cattle farmers, and my patients being the beef cows, bulls, and calves. So this is what I get to wear to work every day, which is pretty fun. I like it. And what my goal is as a cattle veterinarian is to produce beef. So that's what my clients do, and the ultimate goal is to produce beef. And I'm very informal, so if there's questions coming in the chat, I don't mind being interrupted. So I'm going to ask you guys a question. Why do my husband and I own cattle? And what's my job? What's the point of producing beef? I'll let you guys think on that. And I'm sure there's a few things popping into your mind already. Not everyone eats beef, but I'm sure we're all aware of people that do, which is fine. So if you think of McDonald's and your hamburgers, right? Who doesn't love that? That's tried it. That's beef that comes from cattle farms that I work with every day. Not just hamburger though, right? We all know a good steak. I mean, I eat a lot more hamburger than steaks. It can be quite pricey, but equally as good. But I want to tell you guys that it's not just beef coming from the cows. The cows actually give us so much more. And as you're sitting there listening to me, I'm curious if any of you know what those other things are that we get from beef cows.
In the chat, Ella has said, we need food and beef is a good source of protein.
Yes, exactly right. So very high in protein, very high quality protein, correct. Can anyone think of anything besides food though that cattle give us? I hate answering questions too, so I won't wait too long. I'm a shy person by nature.
Ella also said that milk comes from cows.
Yes. Oh, that's interesting. Yep. They come from dairy cows. So same, a cow is a cow, but they come from a different type of cow. So these just being beef cows, that is a very good point. So other things that we get from cattle would be leather. So we get to use, oh, where's my slide? There we go. So leather that would make some of our footballs or sports, or maybe you have a pair of leather boots or a leather belt. So that also comes from cows. Really important if any of you help out in your parents' flower beds or garden, lots of fertilizer comes from the manure of cattle, which is really important to grow other food sources like vegetables and pretty flowers. So that comes from cattle. And another thing that lots of people don't know come from cattle is lots of soaps and products like that can come from cattle as well. So they're a pretty neat animal that we get a lot of really important resources from. And this is just a short list. The list is much longer, but this is why I really like working with the cattle, because they're pretty important to our daily lives. We get lots from them. Okay, but how do they do that? So we have the cattle and we get beef and lots of other products, but there's something really cool about cattle that allows them to do that. So I'm gonna assume that many of you listening had breakfast today. Maybe it was cereal, maybe it was eggs or bacon, but you had something to eat. And there's something very cool about cows is that they can live just off grass and grains, which I'm hoping none of you have tried that, but humans cannot just live off grass and grains. So cows are really cool that they take something that we can't really eat, grass and grains, and turn it into a high quality protein, like Ella said, called beef. So that's really cool about cattle, because there's not many animals that can do that. And how they do that is even more fascinating. So I'm going to ask everyone on the chat, how many stomachs are inside each one of us? We only have one tummy, right? We eat, food goes into one stomach, and that's how it works. But cows and other ruminants like sheep have 4 stomachs. They have 4 stomachs sitting inside of them, and all those stomachs do a different thing. And that's how the cows can turn the grass into beef and all those other products that we get to utilize. So that's pretty cool to have 4 stomachs. It's very different than what's inside of us. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit more now how I specifically get involved. So this is what we kind of call the supply chain. So all of us that eat beef, we're the consumers, right? That's the last stage of the beef supply chain. And we usually get the beef from grocery stores and restaurants, right? But how does it end up there? There's actually 2 steps before the grocery stores, and those are 2 types of farms that I get to work with. And the very first one at the bottom is a cow-calf farm. And that's the first stage of a calf's life. So that's where the baby calves are born. That's where they begin their life. And then the second step is a feedlot. So once they're old enough to leave their mom, to leave their first farm, this is the second farm they go to. And I'll talk a little bit more in detail about both of those. Okay, so cow-calf farms, those are the very first stage of a calf's life. That's where calves are born. Each cow usually has one calf a year. They do have twins or triplets or even rarer things. They're very similar to people that way. And most commonly is after the calves are born, they get to spend the summer on grass with their moms, eating all the grass that grows in the summer until they're old enough in the fall, and that's when they're weaned. So that's when they're old enough to leave mom and live on their own. So it's kind of, if you want to think of it, the cow-calf farm is like for us in elementary and high school, right? That's when we live with our parents. Usually we need them to help take care of us. But then once we're older, to go off to jobs or university or college, we leave our parents. So in Canada and Alberta, the average cow-calf farm has 60 cows. So I don't know if any of you have animals in your lives that you take care of, like dogs and cats. You can imagine having 60 dogs or cats to take care of. That's quite a lot. So it's not an easy task. It's a lot of work, but the average farm has about 60 cows. But that varies a lot. Some farms have well over 100, if not 1,000 cows, so mama cows. And so as a vet, as a cattle doc, what that looks like is I have to take care of any disease or illness that those cattle can get. So what does that look like? If you've ever had to see a doctor for any ailment, that looks the same for cattle. So in this first photo, the cow, the bull actually in this photo had an eye infection. So I had to look at his eye very closely. It's a little different that I can't just tell the bull to open his eye and let me look at it. I gotta kind of help him show me his eye because we can't communicate like we can with our human doctors. So that's what I'm doing in that photo. I'm looking at his eye infection, and then I treated him with some antibiotics until he was all better. And then in the second photo, this was a mom that was delivering her baby, and she had to have a C-section. So in that photo, I'm doing a C-section to help deliver her baby so they could go home together and live on the farm. So that's the first type of farm I get to work with, is what we call a cow-calf farm. And then once those calves are old enough, they leave their farm, and I like to call it, this is like going off to university. There's lots of calves coming together to a central place, and this is where they're fed a high energy ration, and this is where they usually, there tends to be a larger population in these farms. So I get to look at these farms every day, but many of you might have never heard of a feedlot or been to a feedlot. So I'll just describe this photo. So this is taken from the air. If you want to see size perspective, you can see the road running in front of the feedlot in the bottom right hand, and those power poles. So everyone knows how high a power pole is, so that can kind of give you perspective for the rest of the photo. And then each of these squares is a pen where the cattle live. And so you can see the cattle, they're quite small because it's taken high up, but there's usually about 100 to 300 cattle in each pen. And what happens there is they're fed daily and to grow them and keep them healthy and grow until harvest for our beef. So you can see they're quite large. There's about 150 pens on this feedlot, and each pen has about 300 animals. So it's a very, very busy place, but I like working with them because it's busy and exciting. So what does that actually look like for the cattle in the feedlot? So these are two photos. The first one on the left shows, like the name implies, feed lot. The point is to give feed to the cattle in this type of farm. So they're usually have full access 100% of the time in their feed bunk, which you can see the cattle eating out of the bunk there. I'm a veterinarian, so I work closely with this client that owns these cattle. But it's interesting that there's actually people who their job is specifically cow nutritionists. So people spend their full career actually formulating diets for these cows and making sure that everything's perfect for those feedlot animals. So just like there's human nutritionists, there's also cow nutritionists, which I think is pretty cool. And then another thing that happens every day on a feedlot is every single animal is checked for any stress, disease, or illness. We tend to call these people, they're the health crew. So they're cowboys and cowgirls that tend to ride their horses. Some of them walk, but this photo of my friend Nicole, she rides her horse through each pen every day and looks for any sick or distressed cattle. And if she does see any, then she removes that cattle from its pen and takes it to a hospital to give it treatment, which happens every single day. So we keep a very, very close eye on them to make sure they stay healthy and safe. Okay, but this is kind of cool. So this is me as a veterinarian and my friend on the other side. Her name's Marissa, and she's actually a vet nurse. So we call them registered veterinary technologists, and we work side by side, just like doctors and nurses do in a human hospital. That's what we do on farms, working together to keep the cattle healthy and safe. But how do we keep track of all of this, right? So as you can see, I've highlighted the animal has an ear tag, and that's its own unique identification, just like all of us have first and last names to tell us apart from everyone else and keep records. That is unique to that animal on the farm, and that allows us to keep information on that animal. And even more so than the visual number, we actually have radio frequency tags, so that we can scan and store information in that tag to tell us about that animal. And that's really important because we got to make sure that we keep track of all the details. So if I entered that tag into a computer on the farm, I could find out where that animal's from, how much he weighed when he first came to the feedlot, how much he weighs now, if he was ever sick and he ever got any treatments. Everything is recorded so we can keep them healthy and safe. And then we know that the beef that we're getting from them in the end that we're going to consume is also healthy and safe for us. So that's really important to keep track of all the details. And so a big, like 30,000 view of what happens in the beef industry is we basically grow little calves, as you can see here on the photo. This calf is about a couple days old, and we grow them into finished beef that we can harvest. And we do that usually less than 2 years. So the average is about 15 months to 2 years, 24 months for that young calf to grow into that large beast in the other photo. So this is always fun because I like to ask people to guess how much they weigh. So I'll give you a hint. The little guy in the first photo, couple days old, is probably about 100 pounds. So I think there's probably students on this chat that are 100 pounds, but it probably took you 10, 12 years to get to 100 pounds. But this guy was born at 100 pounds. So he's 100 pounds, and how much would you say that the adult version weighs? I'll let you guys just think of some numbers in your head. Okay, so in about 15 months, that little calf of 100 pounds is now 1,500 pounds. So that's over 1,000 pounds, and that's how fast they grow. So that's quite a difference between humans and I. And now that you know that those animals are 1,500 pounds, the last photo where we had an animal in a crate kind of to examine them, you'll understand why we need to do that, because we can't just walk up to them. They're very strong, very large animals. So quite rapid growth to harvest the beef. So I like questions, and this is pretty cool because we're all in Alberta, and I feel most of you have noticed maybe the Calgary Stampede or lots of rodeos that go on in the summer in our communities, and how that's all tied to the agriculture industry. And there's something very special about where we live, and I think I've just given you the answer. So in Canada, there's cows all across Canada, but there's one province that has the most beef cows. And because we're in Alberta, and I said it's special about us, I'm sure you guys guessed that our home province does have the most beef cows by far. So almost half of the whole country's beef cattle, 40.7%, are here in our home. Saskatchewan, our neighbors to the east, have the second highest number of cattle, and then it significantly decreases after that. So the beef industry is really important. Maybe some of you on this call know that, but it's a very important piece to our province's industry, and there's lots of people that work in it besides myself. So this is actually one of my favorite slides. So sometimes people ask, what's my favorite part about working in the beef industry? And this photo and the next photo I'm going to show you summarizes why. So this gentleman's name is Craig, and he works on the farm I live on with my husband, and he's a full-time cowboy. So every day he's riding his horse and checking the cattle to make sure they're healthy and safe. So I think horses and cattle are really beautiful animals. So that's what I love, to interact with people like this that are professional cowgirls and cowboys, because it's skill sets that have been around for hundreds of years, and we're still relying on those skill sets, which I think that's a pretty cool connection to the past. But on the flip side, so not only do we get to utilize these traditional skill sets and the cowboy and cowgirl way of life, but it's also a very exciting and modern industry. So this is my husband in this photo, and he's working on the farm with his laptop and his pickup. So although we have the romantic cowboy lifestyle that we get to enjoy, we're also constantly using technology and collecting data and living in a very modern, fast-paced industry. So I like how those two worlds get to come together for me in a very exciting job and lifestyle that I get to live. So that's kind of a quick overview of what happens in the beef industry. Curious if there's any questions or comments.
Yeah,
9:30.
thank you for that overview. We do have some questions, and this is just a reminder, anyone, if you have other questions, leave them in the chat and then we can ask Dr. Natasha. But going back to, you mentioned that cows have 4 stomachs. So Ella wants to know, do they have any other organs?
Yeah, good question. So it's pretty cool. Most other organs that are inside us are also inside of the cow. So it's their 4 stomachs that makes them very, very unique. But most other, like actually all the bones in a cow are pretty much the same in a human, just different shapes and sizes.
Okay.
The other neat thing though that separates cows besides their 4 stomachs is they have no upper front teeth. So if a cow were to smile, they only have teeth on their bottom jaw, not their upper jaw in the front.
Is there a reason they don't have the upper teeth?
So they have the upper teeth in the back to actually grind their food, just like when we eat something chewy, we stick it to the back of our teeth on our molars. But for cows, when they're grazing grass, by not having teeth on the top, they just have a very hard dental pad, and it helps them to pull the grass off very easily.
Okay, right, because that's all they eat is grass and grain, so they're just totally designed for that.
Exactly, yeah.
Cool. And kind of going off of the organ question, which was a great question. So I know for human doctors, you have specialists who might look at your heart or your lungs and different organs. Are there specialists in cattle veterinarianism?
Yeah, so good question. Yes, so although all I do is cattle work, I do not have any specialty after my name, but there's many veterinarians that I work with that have done additional schooling to become specialized just as a cattle veterinarian. And same for small animal doctors. There's lots of specialties, so you can be a specialty in just a dog's heart or a cat's kidneys, for example. Yep, very similar to humans.
Okay. What are some of the main breeds of cattle that you have?
Oh, that's a great question. So if my slides are still showing.
They sure are.
Okay, perfect. So this baby here is an Angus Simmental cross. So both European breeds. Angus, some people might see on lots of products in the grocery store. It's branded as a different, is its own unique product. They tend to be either solid black or solid white. And then in these other photos, this tan one here is a Simmental probably. There's probably Charolais, which are usually white from France. Herefords are from England. So yeah, there's a long, long list.
Right, and you've got a whole mix of them there.
Yes, yep. Some farms are purebred, just like you can go to a dog breeder and get a purebred dog. They just breed that type of cattle, but most farms are mixed commercial, so all types.
Right. And how many beef cattle do you have?
So me and my husband have about 100.
Oh,
That's
wow.
what we look after. Yeah,
That's a lot of animals.
it is. Yes.
Miss Cummings' class would like to know, are there any poisonous plants that might hurt the cattle?
Yes, that's a very important question, and we do have to be on the lookout. The good thing is that most of the poisonous plants are sour tasting, so the cattle tend not to eat them if they have other options. But if they don't have many other options, then we do have to worry about that. Some that can cause abortions or blood sickness or a whole range of disease. Yeah.
Interesting. Why did you decide to become a vet, and where did you go to vet school?
Question. So I always liked sciences growing up, and I was raised on my family's cattle farm, but I have to say that is not necessary. It's a pet peeve of mine. Some people think that to work in agriculture, you have to be from agriculture, but that's not true. And I work with many great people that are better vets in the agriculture industry than me that did not grow up in agriculture. So that's a cool part. So that was my inspiration though, was being raised on a cattle farm. My dad actually used a female cow vet as well. And she kind of inspired me because I really liked the diversity that you get to be outside, but use science as well. So once I graduated high school, I went to the University of Alberta in Edmonton and studied sciences. And from there, I got into the University of Saskatoon to study for 4 years there before I graduated. Things have changed now, and Alberta students have the option to go to Calgary has a vet school, which is pretty cool, more local.
Right. So that also kind of answered one of the other questions, is like, how do you become a vet? So it sounds like a lot of school is involved, just like if people become doctors.
Yes, yeah, it's pretty much the equivalent of human medicine. So before getting into vet school, some people study between 2 and 4 years of just general sciences, and then can apply. And then once you get into vet school, it's 4 years. And if you wanted to specialize, it would be another 2, 3, 4 years after that.
Right. And you mentioned also in your slideshow there, vet technicians are kind of like the nurses of being a veterinarian. Is that also that amount of school, or is there a different path to being a vet tech?
Yes, great question. Vet techs are so important. We can't do what we do as doctors without our nurses. So it is a much different path. So it's a 2-year diploma program that you can enter right out of school. It's still a very science heavy based program. So they have to work quite hard, but there's quite a few schools that offer it. So Lakeland and Vermilion, Olds College in Central Alberta, Fairview in the north, and Nate in Edmonton. And I might be forgetting one, but there's quite a few more schools that you can apply to also work in veterinary medicine.
Very cool. We have time for maybe one or two questions. Let's see. What's your favorite thing about cattle?
That's that is a good question, specific about cattle. So I grew up actually kind of having pets for cows. So I think they're actually very interesting animals with their own different personalities. And when you work with them, you get to learn, like, just like you have multiple dogs and they have very different personalities, you tend to see that with cattle. So I just like getting to know them, and I look at them as companions as well that I get to work with every day.
Totally.
Yeah.
That's very cool. And our last question, what does like the day-to-day of being a cattle vet look like for you?
Yeah, that's interesting. So every day is different, which is one of my favorite parts. So I showed you a lot of photos of me working with the cattle, touching them, doing my physical exam, determining why they're sick and how to treat them. But the other part of my job goes back to that ear tag, their identification, and all the information that we collect. So on our feedlots, everything is monitored and collected, and I get all that data back into my computer. So I'm constantly monitoring the data to make sure that the health and everything else is okay. And if something starts to slip, then I have to go in and find out why. So lots of times I get to kind of do disease investigations. If there's a higher proportion of cattle getting sick, I have to figure out why and how to prevent that in the future. And with that comes in a lot of training with the farm staff. So like Craig in that photo, he's one of the gentlemen that I get to regularly train on how to take care of the cattle better. So probably training the farm staff to take care of the cattle is probably my favorite part of the job.
That's very cool. And again, with those like ear tags, it's so cool the amount of technology that goes into this, because I think a lot
Yeah.
of people, if they haven't been on a farm, might think it's really old-fashioned, but there's
Yeah.
tons of technology going on, right?
Agreed. Thank you for highlighting that. Yes, so much technology. So
Yeah, so
sometimes I
cool.
don't leave my house being a vet because I'm just doing everything on my computer with data, which is really important.
Totally. Well, that's all the time for questions we have. Thank you, Natasha, for joining us. I learned a ton. I'm sure the students all really enjoyed that as well. And thank you everybody for joining us for Career Agriculture Literacy Month. I hope you learned a ton this month, all about all sorts of different farms and professions in farming. We will send out this video if you want to catch up on it, rewatch it for all those cool fun facts. But yeah, have a great day, everyone. Thank you.
Yes,
Bye.
thank you so much. Thank you for coming and joining me.